It was a fiery, blistering showdown that no one in the studio saw coming. Veteran broadcaster Nigel Farage locked horns with outspoken economist Liam Halligan in a clash that spiraled from tense exchanges into full-blown confrontation. The trigger? Britain's spiraling debt crisis and the government's handling of soaring borrowing costs. What followed were blistering accusations of lies, hypocrisy, and reckless deception hurled across the table with unflinching force. And just when it seemed the storm might calm, Halligan dropped a bombshell that left the studio stunned into silence. But that was only the beginning. Watch the full video to uncover every explosive detail, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more hard-hitting political showdowns.
Did you know over 95% of our viewers aren't subscribed? Subscribing is free and helps us create more great content. Hit subscribe now and join our community.
Debt service costs were already very high. The tax burden, tax as a share of GDP, was already a 70-year high. But Rachel Reeves and Labour have made it much, much worse because they've jacked up borrowing, they've jacked up spending, not least in that October Halloween budget last year. They jacked up borrowing and spending again in April, and they're going to do the same this coming October, November, the next budget. And guess what? Financial markets, they don't care what the Bank of England's saying about interest rates. They're just mood music, what the Bank of England's doing, because the financial markets, the big insurance companies, the investment houses, the sovereign wealth funds that actually determine borrowing costs in the economy, they're saying we don't believe the Bank of England that inflation's under control. We don't believe the government that they're going to get spending under control. All we see is a bunch of mad left-wingers on the government's backbenches pushing Downing Street around, as we saw with those botched welfare reforms earlier this summer. That's why, Nigel, the 30-year gilt yield, it sounds like arcane. Basically, the long-term cost of government borrowing, it's the basis for every borrowing cost in the economy, whether it's your hire purchase agreement on your car or in the long term your mortgage. Certainly, it determines what the government pays, is now at its highest in over a quarter of a century. Yes, Blair came in on a big majority with a high gilt yield, but he had government debt of just 36% of GDP. When you're paying a massive gilt yield on 100% of GDP, your debt service costs go through the roof. That's why, Nigel, we're now paying more on debt interest. The government's paying more on debt interest than we spend on schools. Twice what we spend on education. We talk about a 50 billion black hole. We may have to all pay 50 billion quid's worth more of taxes this October. Guess what? That's just half our debt service bill. Yeah, just half.
I know. So, Liam, we're in this mess, but Rachel Reeves has another budget in the autumn. Perhaps she can turn this round.
Well, if she comes to the House and doesn't address what's happening on financial markets, if she just ignores it, if she just, stays in line with the sort of youthful advisors around her who just say, oh, don't worry, bond yields are going up across the country, unless she acknowledges that government borrowing costs now in the UK are well beyond where they are in Greece, Spain, Italy. Nice places to go on holiday, not necessarily paragons of virtue when it comes to budgetary discipline, with respect to my Greek, Spanish and Italian friends. Bond yields are now way above where they were at the height of the mini budget crisis under Liz Truss. Do you hear that from other broadcasters? No, you don't.
I know. Why? Why is it not being discussed?
Because I think that there was a lot of ideological aversion to what Liz Truss was trying to do from our mainstream media, but also because Liz Truss made mistakes. I've got some respect for Liz Truss, as you know, but it was wrong to not tell the OBR about your budget. It was not wrong to not give the Bank of England the details of your budget. I understand why she was frustrated at those organisations, but you can't just ride roughshod over the institutions in real time. Reform them if you want, but don't just dismiss them. Yeah. And I think markets were really spooked by that. But guess what? They're a lot more spooked now by Labour.
Yeah. But she didn't promise to cut spending, did she?
No, she didn't promise to cut spending, and she said that she would support energy bills in the aftermath of the war in Ukraine. In the end, she didn't spend a lot of the money that she said she might spend on that. But the main point is this. Nothing she was doing was particularly radical. She wanted to bring down the top rate of tax to where it was under Brown and Blair. She wanted to not cut corporation tax. She wanted to keep corporation tax where it was. But look, the big picture here, Nigel, and it's a decision for the Tories and, with respect, your party as well. Who is going to be the grown-up in the room here? Who is going to stand up for mathematical and financial reality? We are spending way, way, way beyond our means. The markets are now starting to call time on the UK economy in the way they're scrutinising no other major economy in the world. We face a 1976 style meltdown when we went cap in hand to the IMF. It's not just me that's saying that, Nigel. It's now very serious people. My Sunday Telegraph, the article in the Sunday Telegraph reflected an interview on my When the Facts Change Substack with a guy called Jajit Chadha, who's a Cambridge professor, one of the most respected economists in Britain, very much a sort of non-political guy, mild-mannered. And after that interview, you had two other former members of the MPC, the Monetary Policy Committee, saying exactly the same thing. And guess what, Nigel? My WhatsApp is full of serious economists saying the same thing.
Liam, you're a star. Thank you. I ran over time there with Liam, but what he said was fascinating. We're in a lot of mess, aren't we?
Yeah, look, this is clearly really troubling for us all, because what happens for the government and the country at that top level affects all of our lives. And so we should all take a real interest in this. I mean, I do think it's important equally not to talk. I'm not here to defend the government, but it's important not to talk the country down equally. You know, back then, when we last went to the IMF, our currency, our exchange rate with the dollar had gone from 260 to 160, so huge shift. That's not happened recently.
Where we are now.
But you know, I think the amount of borrowing is really troubling.
Well, it is very worrying, and I don't think we've properly recovered from the 2008 crash, which has, you know, had impact all around the world. I mean, I know it's only tiny, but we are still one of the fastest growing economies in the G7. Yeah, but
well, we might be, Joe,
yes,
but we've also got the highest inflation, so you've got to weigh all these things up.
But I think Ranald's right. There's a great danger that we talk ourselves, and I think, you know, to a certain extent, that's what Rachel Reeves did when she first was in office. Well, we need to also be positive as well.
And that speech from the things that can only get worse. Speech that we got from the Prime Minister was absolutely
So I think we must avoid the doom loop.
Well,
but it is rather worrying.
We shouldn't talk ourselves into negativity, but I tell you what, Liam Halligan, you know, it tries to be pretty hateful and what he does and what he said there he meant. To my great panel, thank you very much to you at home for watching and for listening. Thank you.